The start of 2017 has been very turbulent for Israel. The United Nations Security Council passed UN Security Resolution 2334 that declares that Jewish settlements in the biblical heartland of Israel are illegal. The resolution also refused to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Jewish holy sites in Jerusalem, such as the Western Wall, Temple Mount, and the Old City, and instead referred to East Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria as occupied Palestinian territories. To make it worse for the Israeli government, the Obama administrations refused to use its veto against the biased UN security resolution. This went against a personal promise to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by the US President Obama to protect Israel's back at the UN. The British government's role in drafting the resolution was a shocking betrayal of the only true democracy in the Middle East. The world's condemnation of Israel gave a green light to Palestinian terrorism, and weeks later, Jerusalem was hit by a terror truck attack that resulted in the murder of 4 young Israeli soldiers that included 3 girls and critically injured another 16 soldiers. This was followed by 17 nations gathering in Paris on Sunday, the 15th of January, to attempt to impose a Palestinian state on Israel and seek to internationally endorse the shocking UN Security Resolution 2334. The French government, under its beleaguered President Hollande, is the most anti-Israel government in the Western world. The Paris Peace Conference demonstrated how the nations are gathering against Jerusalem. The fear the Israeli government and supporters of Israel had on the eve of the Paris Peace Conference was that a declaration would be produced by world leaders to condemn Israel. It was believed that this would lead to another dreadful UN Security Council resolution, but this time in support of recognition of a unilateral Palestinian state. All of this occurring just days before Donald Trump's inauguration on Friday, the 20th of January, with the intention of trying to tie the diplomatic hands of the new incoming US administration. The Paris Peace Conference and this gathering of the nations against Israel reads something out of Psalm 2, verses 1 to 4. Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in heaven shall laugh. The Lord shall hold them in derision. The nations seek to impose a unilateral Palestinian state on Israel and demanding that the Jewish state return to its insecure boundaries of the 1949 armistice line described as the Auschwitz borders by Israel's most successful and articulate foreign minister, Abba Eban. Abba Eban, who served as Israel's foreign minister during the Six-Day War of June 1967, said this about Israel's pre-1967 borders. We have openly said that the map will never again be the same as on the 4th of June 1967. For us, this is a matter of security and of principles. The June map is for us the equivalent to insecurity and danger. I do not exaggerate when I say that it has for us something of a memory of Auschwitz. We shudder when we think of what would have awaited us in the circumstances of the June 1967 if we had been defeated, with the Syrians on the mountain and we in the valley, with the Jordanian army in sight of the sea, with the Egyptians who hold our throat in their hands in Gaza. This is a situation which will never be repeated in history. If the nation of Israel implemented the UN Security Resolution 2334, it would result in national suicide for Israel and completely undermine Israel's security in the most dangerous and hostile region of the world. What the international community needs to understand is that the Palestinian leadership is not interested in peace and having their own state, as this would mean being responsible and governing in the interests of their people. Instead, they want to escalate the conflict by using diplomacy, economics, and law as weapons to weaken the nation of Israel. They know that if Israel were to return to its indefensible borders of June the 4th, 1967, then this would put the Jewish state in a dire security situation. If Israel were to make a peace agreement with Mahmoud Abbas today, there would be no guarantee that he would even last 6 months in office. Abbas's 4-year presidency of the Palestinian Authority expired on the 9th of January 2009, and presidential elections and parliamentary elections have been suspended indefinitely, meaning that he lacks any legitimacy in the eyes of his people. Were he to call for presidential elections, he would most likely lose to a Hamas candidate. Therefore, if Israel made a comprehensive peace treaty with Abbas in complete fulfillment of UN Security Resolution 2334, or unilaterally withdrew from Judea and Samaria, paving the way for the creation of a Palestinian state, these would be the direct security consequences.
Israel is a small state surrounded by Arab countries 650 times its size, some of which are large bases of global terror. Only 44 miles separate between the Jordan Valley and the Mediterranean Sea. After the Six-Day War in 1967, when Israel was attacked by 4 armies on 3 fronts, United Nations Security Council Resolution 242 stated that Israel was entitled to new defensible borders to replace the previous fragile lines from which it was attacked. This is Israel's mountain ridge, rising up to 3,000 feet. It dominates Israel's major coastal cities, where more than 70% of its population, 80% of its industry, and all of its airfields and seaports are located. Missiles launched from the Judean hills pose an immediate threat to Jerusalem, Israel's capital. Israel's only international airport, Ben Gurion, would be in the range of even primitive rockets, while all planes taking off and landing would be threatened by shoulder-launched anti-aircraft missiles. More advanced weaponry would be able to hit virtually any point in Israel. If Israel were forced back to the 1949 armistice lines, the Green Line, the country's width would be reduced to a narrow 9-mile waistline that would be impossible to defend. That's why any future arrangement must include Israeli control over key areas of the mountain ridge and a demilitarized Palestinian state.
A likely political scenario would be that Israel would gain international acclaim for her courageous efforts for peace. On the Palestinian side, Mahmoud Abbas would most probably lose a presidential election to Hamas because of his unpopularity, or Hamas would carry out a coup like they did in Gaza in 2007, bringing Hamas to power. The new state of Palestine would be turned into another dangerous Islamist state that would destabilize Israel and the region. Palestinian terrorists would be able to use the mountains of Judea and Samaria to place major Israeli cities in danger by firing rockets and missiles into Israel's main population centers. Israel's international airport, Ben Gurion, would be in the direct line of fire of Hamas's missiles. This would spread terror and fear through Israel, bringing her economy and tourist industry to a grinding halt. It would also be very difficult for the Israeli military to defeat the terrorists without a full-scale war against a Hamas-controlled state. The other consequences of Hamas governing a Palestinian state would mean that they would directly border the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, and this could destabilize the country, especially considering that around 2/3 of Jordan's population is from Palestinian origin. The Palestinian leadership viewed Jordan as Palestinian, as it was originally part of the British Mandate, so they would want to intentionally destabilize the kingdom. We can also learn from Israel's recent history that unilateral withdrawals from the security zone in southern Lebanon in 2000 and Gaza in 2005 led to greater violence and terror. Israel's withdrawal from southern Lebanon occurred without incidents, but also had unforeseen dangerous security impact. Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed Shia terrorist organization, took over that territory and now pose a direct security threat to Israel. They now have an estimated 90,000 rockets and missiles aimed at Israel. Israel's withdrawal of southern Lebanon also resulted in the collapse of the Christian South Lebanese army and Israel's strongest allies in the region. This sent a message to the Arab world that if Israel was prepared to sacrifice their strongest ally in the Middle East, what does this mean for Israel's Arab population? Yasser Arafat saw Israel's withdrawal as weakness, and he concluded that terrorism against Israel could force them to concede more territory. And this is exactly what happened 4 months later when Arafat launched the second intifada against Israel that was marked by daily suicide bombings all over Israel. In August 2005, the Israeli government of Ariel Sharon wanted to demonstrate to the world Israel's commitment to peace by his disengagement plan from Gaza and the uprooting of 8,500 settlers. But did this lead to peace? No. Instead, it led to over 11,000 rockets and missiles being fired into Israel, with 5 million Israelis living under the shadow of Hamas's rockets. Hamas' control of Gaza also meant that Israel launched 2 military ground offensives against the Islamist terrorist organization to protect her citizens. The international community needs to understand that by attempting to force Israel into making dangerous territorial concessions for peace and insisting that Israel permit the creation of a hostile Palestinian state, leaving her with the Auschwitz borders, would be sowing the seeds for Israel's destruction, leading to another genocide against the Jewish people. This is the reason why Israel can never agree to the UN Security Resolution 2334 that the Paris Peace Conference wanted Israel to adopt. The Paris Peace Conference went ahead without Israeli or Palestinian representation. 70 other nations took part, including 35 foreign ministers from the US, France, Germany, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and other nations. On this occasion, it was the British government that came to Israel's defense with a new sense of political realism. Theresa May recognized the need to build a strong strategic relationship with the incoming Trump administration rather than siding with President Obama. She decided to send only a low-level diplomatic delegation, adopting the position of observer status, and therefore Britain did not participate in the talks and refused to sign the declaration. The British government also blocked the European Union from implementing the Paris Peace Declaration. This ended any hopes that this conference would lead to another UN Security Council condemning Israel and voting on the recognition of a unilateral Palestinian state just days before Donald Trump is inaugurated as America's next president. Theresa May deserves credit for protecting Israel at the Paris Peace Conference and for going a long way to redeeming the actions of her government in helping to draft UN Security Resolution 2334. We are beginning to see a new world emerge, with the American-British alliance once again set to take center stage in world diplomacy to be a force for good and not for evil. The world leaders who supported the Paris Peace Conference would do well to remember that those that come against Israel come against the God of Israel.